Glorfindel has departed from Valinor, following his kinsman Turgon to Middle-earth, and has found himself in Gondolin, becoming a lord of one of its 12 houses. After a terrible assault upon the hidden city by Morgoth's forces, Gondolin has fallen, and Glorfindel, after bravely defending his people, has sacrificed his life, slaying a Balrog in the process. His spirit is now waiting in the halls of Mandos to receive the judgment of the Valar. Today we narrate the second part of the life and story of Glorfindel. Thanks to Glorfindel's noble actions in life and his sacrifice to save Idril and Tuor, the grandparents of Elrond half-elven, he is re-embodied after only a short time, possibly even before the first stage comes to an end. When Glorfindel of Gondolin was slain, his spirit would, according to the laws established by the One, be obliged at once to return to the land of the Valar. Then he would go to Mandos and be judged, and would then remain in the halls of waiting until Manwë granted him release. Now Glorfindel of Gondolin was one of the exiled Noldor, rebels against the authority of Manwë, and they were all under a ban imposed by him. They could not return in bodily form to the Blessed Realm. Manwë, however, was not bound by his own ordinances, and being still the supreme ruler of the kingdom of Arda, could set them aside when he saw fit. Glorfindel had sacrificed his life in defending the fugitives from the wreck of Gondolin against a demon out of Angorodrim, and so enabling Tuor and Idril, daughter of Turgon, and their child Eärendil to escape and seek refuge at the mouths of Sirion. Though he cannot have known the importance of this, and would have defended them even had they been fugitives of any rank, this deed was of vital importance to the designs of the Valar. After his purging of any guilt that he had incurred in the rebellion, he was released from Mandos, and Manwë restored him. Glorfindel's attitude during the rebellion of the Noldor plays a pivotal role in the Valar's decision of his early re-embodiment. This implies that Glorfindel was natively an elder of great bodily and spiritual stature, a noble character, and that his guilt had been small. Skilliker that he owed allegiance to Turgon and loved his own kindred, and these were his only reasons for remaining with them, although he was grieved by their obstinacy and feared the doom of Mandos. He then became again a living incarnate person, but was permitted to dwell in the Blessed Realm, for he had regained the primitive innocence and grace of the Eldar. For long years he remained in Valinor, in reunion with the Eldar who had not rebelled, and in the companionship of the Maiar. To this he had now become almost an equal, for though he was an incarnate, to whom a bodily form not made or chosen by himself was necessary, his spiritual power had been greatly enhanced by his self-sacrifice. We can thus understand why he seemed so powerful a figure and almost angelic. For more than 1,000 years, Glorfindel remains in the company of these powerful beings, where he also befriends Olorin. At some time, probably early in his sojourn in Valinor, he became a follower and a friend of Olorin, Gandalf, who, as is said in the Silmarillion, had an especial love and concern for the children of Eru. The second age of Middle-earth rolls on, and Sauron, the lieutenant of Morgoth and the second Dark Lord, being perceived only by a handful of elves, secretly starts putting his plan of conquering the elves, men, and dwarves of Middle-earth into motion. At the same time, a mission is assigned to Glorfindel. To counter the threat of Sauron, the Valar decide to send him as their emissary, in a quest similar to that of the Istari, the wizards of Middle-earth. We may then best suppose that Glorfindel returned during the Second Age, before the shadow fell on Númenor, and while the Númenorians were welcomed by the Eldar as powerful allies. His return must have been for the purpose of strengthening Gil-galad and Elrond when the growing evil of the intentions of Sauron were at last perceived by them. It might therefore have been as early as Second Age 1200, when Sauron came in person to Lindon and attempted to deceive Gil-galad, but was rejected and dismissed, but it may have been perhaps more probably as late as circa 1600, the Year of Dread, when Barad-dûr was completed and the One Ring forged. Glorfindel makes this journey to Middle-earth together with the Blue Wizards, Alatar and Pallando, who are sent on a different mission to the east and south of Middle-earth. The other two came much earlier, at the same time probably as Glorfindel, when matters became very dangerous in the Second Age. Glorfindel was sent to aid Elrond and was, though not yet said, preeminent in the war in Eriador, but the other two Istari were sent for a different purpose. Glorfindel's part in the Second Age, though great, is mostly overlooked by the histories, as he, like Gandalf, does not usually display his immense and angelic power openly, but there are some clues regarding his deeds during that age. It seems far more likely that he was sent in the crisis of the Second Age, when Sauron invaded Eriador to assist Elrond, and that though not yet mentioned in the annals recording Sauron's defeat, he played a notable and heroic part in the war. At the end of the Second Age, Sauron is defeated in the War of the Last Alliance. The Second Age draws to the end close, and the Third Age begins. For the entirety of this age, Glorfindel probably resides in Imladris, under Master Elrond. During the second millennium of the Third Age, a growing evil assails the managed kingdom of Arnor to the north of Eriador. Led by an evil being who is none other than the Witch King, the greatest servant of Sauron, the armies of the realm of Angmar, consisted of evil men, orcs and other fell creatures, are unleashed upon Arnor. After centuries of war between the two realms, the Witch King amasses his forces and launches a final onslaught on Arthedain, the last remnant of the kingdom of Arnor, capturing Fornost. Soon Gondor sends reinforcements under Eärnur, the future king of that realm, and together with Círdan, the elf lord of the Grey Havens, they make an assault upon the forces of Angmar and scatter them in a great rout. The Witch King gathers all the troops he is able to from the wreck and flees northward to Carn Dûm, but upon doing so, he is overtaken by the cavalry of Gondor, led by Prince Eärnur. At the same time, a force of elves led by Glorfindel arrives out of Rivendell, and the remnants of the army of Angmar are utterly destroyed. But it is said that when all was lost, suddenly the Witch King himself appeared, black-robed and black-masked, upon a black horse. Fear fell upon all who beheld him, but he singled out the captain of Gondor for the fullness of his hatred, and with a terrible cry he rode straight upon him. Eärnur would have withstood him, but his horse could not endure that onset, and it swerved and bore him far away before he could master it. Then the Witch King laughed, and none that heard it ever forgot the horror of that cry. But Glorfindel rode up then on his white horse, and in the midst of his laughter the Witch King turned to flight and passed into the shadows, for night came down on the battlefield, and he was lost, and none saw whither he went. Eärnur now rode back, but Glorfindel, looking into the gathering dark, said, "Do not pursue him, he will not return to this land. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall." This prophecy will be remembered by many, and will be fulfilled many centuries later in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. After the war with Angmar is ended, nothing is recorded of Glorfindel's deeds and role in the events and struggles of the Westlands until the War of the Ring, when he takes again an active role, helping the ring-bearer, Frodo Baggins. News reached the Lord Elrond in Imladris that the 9 ring wraiths are abroad, and that Frodo is astray, and that he bears a great burden without guidance, as Gandalf has not returned from the south. So on the 9th of October 3018 of the Third Age, Elrond sends out many high elves to search for him on the road. One of these elves is Glorfindel, who is one of those that can ride openly against the Nine, as he does not have any fear of them. On the 11th of October, he crosses the last bridge of Mithaithel, and 3 of the Nazgûl are upon it, but due to his powerful presence, they withdraw before him, and he pursues them westward. During that time, he leaves a token on the bridge. A beryl, a pale green elfstone, so that Aragorn and the hobbits may find it and gain hope. Upon pursuing the 3 Nazgûl, Glorfindel comes upon another 2, but they too flee before him and they turn away southward. Afterwards, he continues his search for Frodo. On the 16th of October, he finds the company's trail and follows it over the last bridge. Finally, he finds them 2 days later, at the dusk of the 18th of October. Having heard the sound of his horse behind them, Aragorn and the hobbits had feared that he could be a ringwraith pursuing them, and so they had hidden themselves to avoid him. Suddenly into view below came a white horse, gleaming in the shadows, running swiftly. In the dusk its headstall flickered and flashed, as if it were studded with gems like living stars. The rider's cloak streamed behind him, and his hood was thrown back. His golden hair flowed, shimmering in the wind of his speed. To Frodo, it appeared that a white light was shining through the form and raiment of the rider. As if through a thin veil, Strider sprang from hiding and dashed down towards the road, leaping with a cry through the heather. But even before he had moved or called, the rider had reined in his horse and halted, looking up towards the thicket where they stood. When he saw Strider, he dismounted and ran to meet him. Aina Vedui Dunadan, my Govanen. His speech and clear ringing voice left no doubt in their hearts. The rider was of the elven folk. No others that dwelt in the wide world had voices so fair to hear, but there seemed to be a note of haste or fear in his call, and they saw that he was now speaking quickly and urgently to Strider. This is Glorfindel, who dwells in the house of Elrond. Hail and well met at last. I was sent from Rivendell to look for you. We feared that you were in danger upon the road. But come, there is no time for further news. Since you are here, we must risk the peril of the road and go. There are 5 behind us, and when they find your trail upon the road, they will ride after us like the wind, and they are not all. Where the other 4 may be, I do not know. I fear that we may find the ford is already held against us. Frodo, having been injured by the Morgul knife of the Witch King many days before, starts suddenly to feel great weariness, and he falls to the ground. But Glorfindel catches him as he sinks, and with concern, he takes him gently in his arms. Aragorn draws out the Witch King's hilt, which was the only part that was left of the knife, and gives it to the Elf Lord, who looks intently at it. There are evil things written on this hilt, though maybe your eyes cannot see them. Keep it, Aragorn, till we reach the house of Elrond, but be wary and handle it as little as you may. Alas, the wounds of this weapon are beyond my skill to heal. I will do what I can, but all the more do I urge you now to go on without rest. He searched the wound on Frodo's shoulder with his fingers, and his face grew graver, as if what he learned disquieted him. But Frodo felt the chill lessen in his side and arm. A little warmth crept down from his shoulder to his hand, and the pain grew easier. The dusk of evening seemed to grow lighter about him, as if a cloud had been withdrawn. He saw his friends' faces more clearly again, and a measure of new hope and strength returned. You shall ride my horse, but you need not fear. My horse will not let any rider fall that I command him to bear. His pace is light and smooth, and if danger presses too near, he will bear you away with a speed that even the black steeds of the enemy cannot rival." "No, he will not. I shall not ride him, if I am to be carried off to Rivendell or anywhere else, leaving my friends behind in danger." Glorfindel, smiling, answers, "I doubt very much if your friends would be in danger if you were not with them. The pursuit would follow you and leave us in peace, I think. It is you, Frodo, and that which you bear that brings us all in peril." Eventually, Frodo rides Asphaloth, Glorfindel's horse. And in this way, they travel for many hours towards the forge of Bruinen. The hobbits find it hard to keep up with the swift and tireless feet of the Elf Lord. In the morning of the 20th of October, Glorfindel warns the company of the peril that awaits them. "Our peril will be greatest just ere we reach the river, for my heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us, and other danger may be waiting by the ford." Soon Glorfindel hears an echo behind them, and he realizes that the Nazgûl are upon them. "Fly, fly, the enemy is upon us." The white horse leaped forward. The hobbits ran down the slope. Glorfindel and Strider followed as a rearguard. They were only halfway across the flat when suddenly there was a noise of horses galloping. Out of the gate in the trees that they had just left rode a black rider. He reined his horse in and halted, swaying in his saddle. Another followed him, and then another, then again 2 more. "Ride forward, ride!" Frodo does not obey at once. A strange reluctance has seized him, and all of a sudden he feels in his heart that the Nazgûl are silently commanding him to wait. "Ride on, Norolim, Asphaloth." At once the white horse sprang away and sped like the wind along the last lap of the road. The Ringwraiths pursue Frodo madly, but they cannot overtake the white elf horse of Glorfindel. It bears Frodo to safety across the ford of Bruinen, but at the other side of the river, he turns around and defies the Nine. At that moment, as 3 of the Ringwraiths get closer and closer to Frodo, the Lord Elrond unleashes the river, and they are overwhelmed and buried under its rising waters. The rest of the 9 draw back in dismay, but suddenly Glorfindel reveals his power behind them, and shining gloriously, he drives them, willingly or not, into the river. With his last failing senses, Frodo heard cries, and it seemed to him that he saw, beyond the riders that hesitated on the shore, a shining figure of white light, and behind it ran small shadowy forms, waving flames that flared red in the grey mist that was falling over the world. The black horses were filled with madness, and leaping forward in terror, they bore their riders into the rushing flood. Their piercing cries were drowned in the roaring of the river as it carried them away. Later, after Frodo has been healed by Elrond in Imladris, Gandalf speaks to him about the spiritual power of Glorfindel and of the High Elves. "And here in Rivendell there live still some of his chief foes, the Elven-wise, lords of the Eldar from beyond the furthest seas. They do not fear the Ringwraiths, for those who have dwelled in the Blessed Realm live at once in both worlds, and against both the seen and the unseen they have great power." "I thought that I saw a white figure that shone and did not grow dim like the others. Was that Glorfindel then?"
"Yes, you saw him for a moment as he is upon the other side, one of the mighty of the Firstborn. He is an elf lord of a house of princes."
On the 25th of October, Glorfindel attends the Council of Elrond, an event which would decide the fate of the One Ring and of the entire Middle-earth. He sits beside several other councillors of Elrond's household. In the council, it is proposed that the ring be sent to Tom Bombadil for safekeeping, a suggestion which Glorfindel wisely objects. But in any case, to send the ring to him would only postpone the day of evil. He is far away. We could not now take it back to him, unguessed, unmarked by any spy. And even if we could, soon or late, the Lord of the Rings would learn of its hiding place and would bend all his power towards it. Could that power be defied by Bombadil alone? I think not. I think that in the end, if all else is conquered, Bombadil will fall, last as he was first, and then night will come. The Council of Elrond decides that the Free Peoples cannot keep the ring from Sauron by strength forever, so Glorfindel proposes a different plan. Then if the ring cannot be kept from him forever by strength, two things only remain for us to attempt: to send it over the sea or to destroy it. Elrond answers that they cannot destroy the ring by any craft that they possess, and that the Valar will not accept it. Then let us cast it into the deeps, and so make the lies of Saruman come true, for it is clear now that even at the council his feet were already on a crooked path. He knew that the ring was not lost forever, but wished us to think so, for he began to lust it for himself. Yet oft in lies, truth is hidden. In the sea it would be safe. But the far-sighted Gandalf speaks of the change of seas and lands, and the fact that they must not opt for a temporary solution, but for a final end to Sauron. Thereafter, they speak of the three rings of the elves, and of the belief of the wise that the elven rings will lose their powers should they manage to destroy the ruling ring. Yet all the elves are willing to endure this chance, if by it the power of Sauron may be broken, and the fear of his dominion be taken away forever. So the Council of Elrond concludes that the only option of the Free Peoples is to take the ring to Mordor and to cast it in the fires of Mount Doom, where it was long ago forged by Sauron. In order to achieve this goal, the Fellowship of the Ring is formed. Elrond at first considers sending two Elfrods of his household to help Frodo and Sam in their quest, but Gandalf answers that they must not trust in strength, but in friendship. Even if you chose for us an Elf Lord, such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road to the fire by the power that is in him. After the Council of Elrond, we hear nothing of Glorfindel's actions. Whatever role Elrond or the Valar has bestowed upon him, he survives the war, and after the One Ring is destroyed, he joins the company of the Lord Elrond and of the Lady Galadriel on their way to Minas Tirith in the midsummer of 1319 of the Third Age. For the wedding of King Elessar and Queen Arwen Undómiel, the daughter of Elrond. Upon the very eve of midsummer, when the sky was blue as sapphire and white stars opened in the east, but the west was still golden and the air was cool and fragrant, the riders came down the north way to the gates of Minas Tirith. First rode Elrohir and Teladan with a banner of silver, and then came Glorfindel and Erestor and all the household of Rivendell. After the wedding, no more is said of Glorfindel. Like Olorin, Gandalf, his task in Middle-earth is done, and as the Third Age comes to an end, the time of the elves is over. Thus, as a high elf of the West, it is likely that Golden Glorfindel, the great captain of Gondolin, and one of the most powerful elves to ever walk Middle-earth, may have at last returned to his birthplace, to Valinor, to the ever blissful land of the Valar. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one on My Govanen. Namarie.